Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Rosser McDonald. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, Real Prison, Real Freedom. Available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or if you guys want to get everything that Rosser has to offer, do yourself a favor and go directly to his personal site, realprisonrealfreedom.com. There, not only will you find more information on Rosser himself, you'll find more information on this book, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing page. So one more time, that's realprisonrealfreedom.com. And I will say, Rosser was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, ReadersMagnet Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, do yourself a favor and contact ReadersMagnet. You can find out more information on them at ReadersMagnet.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Rosser, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we're very much looking forward to this and really looking forward to picking your brain and learning about the information that you've received that we'll all receive now through our association with you. Now, before we go into the book, let's hold off slightly. Rosser, start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
All right. I grew up a normal middle-class home, a Christian home, and got married. I met my wife at Oklahoma Baptist University. And so then I'd always had this feeling in the back of my mind, or maybe in my heart, that I wanted to be in broadcasting. I had had a lot of speech and drama classes in high school, one journalism course in college. So I started looking for broadcast jobs, got a job in the radio station, was there for a year, then moved up to a radio and television operation way down in southeastern Oklahoma, where we were considered like a one-horse station. A lot of the folks that viewed our station were the only station they could view at the time. But it's part of the process of moving up in the business. After 5 years there, I went to Tulsa and concentrated on news at that point on the NBC station in Tulsa. And then to Dallas, to the ABC station, where I was concentrating on news and doing documentaries and so on and so forth. But all of that is to say that I was on a track I wanted to do, and I enjoyed doing what I did in terms of news, in terms of documentaries, and so on. And it just was great. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And then it was like God said to stop telling the bad news and to tell the good news. And he moved me to the Southern Baptist Radio and Television Commission in Fort Worth as a television producer. And I was there as a television producer for 27 years. And in that activity there, I was producing a lot of television programs, some in the studio, but most of mine were out in the field, documentary style. And so that's where along the way, I picked up, and I don't want to feed my own ego here, but I've received a number of awards, including 2 Emmy nominations. And I did for 12 years. I produced an hour-long program for NBC to use as part of their religious affairs programming. And so that is kind of a general description of where I got to where I could retire, and then had time to think about writing a book.
Rosser, listen, we're going to have you back on the network just to discuss your background. I mean, your resume is so impressive. I'm sure you have stories for days, and we'd love to hear about them. But of course, today is all about real prison, real freedom. So without further ado, tell us a little bit more about your book, please.
Okay, I met Rickie Smith, the main character in the book, in 1990. I have done a number of programs in prisons, interviews and various things, and over the years. So this was another one. I was there working on one of those NBC programs on prison ministry. And in that, a volunteer chaplain took me. He was excited about Rickie Smith having become a Christian. So he took me back into what they call super segregation, where it's the deepest, darkest lockup they have in the toughest prison they own in Texas. And but anyway, I got to meet Rickie at that point, and to me, he was as nice a guy as you would ever want to meet, because, of course, he now is a Christian. But the book title, Real Prison, relates to the fact that Texas prisons are tough. They have a reputation over many years of being tough. A federal judge said, you cannot, I'm going to take over your prison system because you are treating inmates inhumanely, unconstitutionally. And so he did take over, and that's part of one of the themes in the book as well. But anyway, Texas had that reputation as one of the tough prisons and one of the largest prisons in the U.S. So and then Rickie, because of his violence, was tucked away back in special cells built for he and 17 other gang members, like Aryan Brotherhood and other gangs that. They put those most violent people back in this special cell block that they built just for them. So that's where Rickie was when I met him. So that is talking about real prison. I mean, that is, you couldn't find any more real prison than what Rickie was experiencing there in the Texas Department of Corrections. And so then the other part, the title is Real Freedom. And the real freedom, you mentioned redemption. By the way, you were talking about that Rickie was introduced to God. Rickie had been introduced to God from his childhood up. And well, for a brief time, it seemed to be that he was going to, get along with the church and prison and God. But that soon fell apart because his parents were divorcing, and he was upset about that. He had prayed and asked God to keep them together, keep his family together, and they divorced anyway. And that's when he went out, young teenager, went out in the woods, looked up through the trees and said, if that's the kind of God you are, I don't want anything to do with you. You can go to hell. So that was a milestone in his experience with the Lord. But many, many times there were people who wanted to talk more about the Lord with him, and in prison that happened. They have people go in and do prison ministry, and every time they would try to get a conversation going with Rickie, he'd run them off, cuss them out. Fortunately, he was behind these extreme secure doors and couldn't get to them. But he didn't want anything to do with their religion. He'd already had he thought his experience with God, and it was not good, and so forget it. But his rage and hatred and all of the fights and attacks that he had made, he stabbed 2 guards, officers in the system. and and a black inmate as well. And so he was just very tired, very worn out. He had tried all these things, and he had made some progress, but what he really wanted to do was kill a prison guard and go to death row. And so far, that hadn't happened, and he's been disappointed in the way things are going. And so he's just worn out, and there's I describe in the book how it came about, but there's a word, rest, that appealed to, it caught Rickie's attention. It's Jesus in talking to his disciples and to us, saying, "Come unto me, you who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And Rickie heard that word rest from a letter that a man had sent to him, and he said, "Rest. That's what I need, rest." So that put him on the track of actually looking more into what Jesus was saying and what it meant and what it would mean to him and so on. And that was a track that he went on to become actually a Christian, to bring Jesus into his life and experience the redemption that you mentioned. Now, he had a lot to learn because his life was being lived 180 degrees opposite of what a Christian should live. And so he had to learn how to change his life to become a Christian and to experience that kind of lifestyle, which was so different than what he had been doing for the last many years. And so that, put him on that track. And there was this volunteer chaplain that had introduced me to Rickie, would go and see him every weekend, and they would talk about things. And Jack, the volunteer chaplain, would help Rickie, try to disciple him about things. The hardest thing was forgiveness, because he told Rickie told him one day when he came, he said, "Listen, I keep having these angry thoughts that come, and I want to go and hit somebody or whatever." And Jack said, "Well, those thoughts come because you have not forgiven those people. You must forgive all of the people that you have harmed, all the people you have attacked, all the people you've cussed out." Rickie said, "I don't think I can do that." Jack said, "Yeah, you can, and you have to." And so that was a major learning track for Rickie. And Jack was very determined to help him get that lesson down. And eventually he did. He asked forgiveness from wardens, from other prisoners, from officers, so on and so forth. So that gets us to that's the second track, which is the redemption and the real freedom. Because if you have the freedom from the Lord, you have real freedom.
I'm curious. So we know how your relationship began with Rickie and why this, of course, is something of particular interest to you. Now, I'm curious, why put the book out for the public to partake in as well? What inspired you to do that?
Well, I don't know if inspired is the proper word. I did it with trepidation. I have written many hour-long scripts and so on, and many other programs I've written, but I have never written a book. And my writing and my talking is all in the along the line of speaking. I write as I would speak on the news, giving the news. And so I didn't know, now is that going to work in a book, and so on and so forth. So, but I just have to say that the Lord was behind that and was the one who convinced me that I needed to go ahead. and gave me the patience to spend 10 years of doing it. A lot of research had to go into that because, as I say, a federal judge jumped in. The Texas prison system rejected the judge's claims, even though the appeals court agreed with Judge Justice and all. But, all of those things going on in there takes research. You have to find out when and where and who and why and those kind of things to put it together. So, as I say, it took me like 10 years to get all of that together. There also was a warden who was one of the best wardens they had in Texas Department of Corrections. He's now retired, but he was an unorthodox warden in terms of Texas Department of Corrections. And he is a Christian, and he took Rickie on as a project after Rickie had become a Christian. And he had Rickie move to his prison unit and was able to get him, out of that worst segregation area, still in segregation at Warden Price's unit also, but it was a step up. And so then he brought him through some more steps until finally Rickie was like a normal inmate, could go to the cafeteria, could go, commissary and do these things that normal prisoners do, rather than being stuck 23 hours a day back in a hellhole.
Listen, what I love so much about this is we've talked about so much, but yet we've barely scratched the surface. I mean, there is still so much left to be discovered. The onus is now on you. Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Real Prison, RealFreedom.com are the places you have to go. Real Prison, Real Freedom is the title you have to pick up, and Rosser McDonald is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table. Rosser, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Yes, sir. Glad to be with you.